Better already.
Mm-hmm.
We're good.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 3 of the Into the Stands podcast. Chris, Robbie, and Colin back at you with some more news and recaps in the baseball and football world. I guess we'll start with what the biggest story is, and I think this is the biggest story in all sports. I'm sure all of you can agree, and that is Aaron Judge hitting number 61, tying Roger Maris for not only the Yankees home run single season record, but the American League single season record for home runs, and arguably has now tied the major league record, according to some people, as after Roger Maris, you have the three steroid users. You have Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, and Mark McGwire. And it's just another achievement milestone in this incredible, magnificent season that we're seeing from Aaron Judge. And he's not done yet. He still has
I think it's six
around a week.
I think 6 or 7 games left.
The games to play. 3 against the Baltimore Orioles at the stadium. It'd be really nice if he could do it there, especially on Sunday, because I'll be there on Sunday. I don't know if I'll be sitting in the outfield. We're scheduled. It looks like we're just sitting in the fourth deck because the tickets are extremely expensive. But being there, hopefully he could hit that. And whatever, if he hits it tomorrow night or Saturday, that'd be fine as well. But just a tremendous season, and it's really nice that Roger Maris Jr. and his family were there. Roger Maris Jr. was there yesterday, and in this Toronto series, his brothers and sisters were there for the Red Sox series back in the stadium. But it was really nice for him to be there and watching Aaron Judge, and they've really done a great thing by being there for Aaron Judge and watching him live, because he deserves it. I think Aaron Judge deserves to break the record. I mean, Roger Maris Jr. and his brothers and sisters mentioned how Aaron Judge is like their father, and that he does everything he can to help his team. He doesn't care about personal achievements and record breaking, right? All he cares about is winning. I mean, Aaron Judge was taking walks and taking base hits and ground outs. He wasn't trying to go yard. He wasn't trying to go reaching for pitches outside of the zone or anything. All he wanted to do was take what the pitchers gave him, get a hit if he needed to, and it's working out. And he hit the home run yesterday. It was a low fastball in the zone that he crushed over the wall. Speaking of which, I mean, there's 3 fans that didn't catch the ball. I mean, that's got to be
sad.
Got to be like top 3 worst feelings.
That was sad. I knew, I saw the clip this morning because I didn't get to watch the game last night. And I saw that they had the chance to catch it. It went right off the bottom of the glove. I'm like, how do you do that? How do you fumble the bag that much? It was granted, it's a major milestone, but you didn't really it would have been awesome to see a fan catch it and not go in the bullpen, because it would have been to see what the fan got from Judge. But now it was, as you said, it was a phenomenal achievement. A player who, like you said, 100% deserved it. But 62, like you said, you get to Baltimore, and then I think it's going to be one of the harder stadiums to hit one out in Texas. It is difficult. It is difficult.
It's a little more. I mean, obviously, it's not. I'm trying to think a Detroit or San Francisco.
Nothing's topping Detroit.
No, but it's definitely not the worst stadium to hit home runs out of. But I see what you're saying. It would be very beneficial and a little easier to hit the home run, obviously, at Yankee Stadium, maybe to right field. And, but of course, I want it to be in the bleachers, home run. I want somebody to catch this ball.
It would be very well deserving for him to hit it against Baltimore, a team I believe he has tortured the most. I mean, then again, it's
the Red Sox.
Then again, it is the Yankees, and I remember, what was it, a couple years ago when they hit the most home runs against Baltimore?
Yeah,
when Baltimore was really awful.
As a result, they pretty much forced the Orioles to move their left field wall 30 feet back. I mean, there's no joke in that, and that's actually improves Baltimore a lot. But man, what a moment, and I'm happy for him, and yeah.
Well, I actually want to raise a question here now, because, a big story with this was Roger Maris Jr. Roger Maris Jr. has been coming to all these games. He was actually basically going to Yankees games for a week. I assume that's going to continue now, because he's still waiting to see Judge hit 62. But he actually said something very interesting last night, as well as, I remember he said this before too, on a game on Fox. He said that he feels that if Aaron Judge hits 62, passes his dad's record, he feels that Aaron Judge would be the true home run king. Because it's always been a very long debate about whether or not Barry Bonds and those steroid users truly do have the real home run record. So, it really raises the question. I mean, who would you guys consider the real home run king? Personally, I think that you definitely can make the argument for Judge because, those steroid users, Bonds, Sosa, McGuire, those guys that come to mind, I mean, they did it. They did an amazing feat. But then again, I think in general in sports that steroid use is very, obviously frowned upon. Those guys are never going to make the Hall of Fame. So I do think there is something to having the most home runs without steroids. So I'll ask you guys, who do you think is the true home run king, Aaron Judge or Barry Bonds?
Well, I think I would consider it to be Aaron Judge as well. I mean, there isn't a person, I believe, more qualified to say that Aaron Judge is the official home run record holder for a single season than Roger Maris Jr., the son of Roger Maris, whose record got broken by guys who use steroids. A drug which gives you more power, right? It doesn't make you a better hitter. That's why back when the Astros were starting to get not suspended, but punished for the cheating scandal, you started seeing some pitchers go out and say, I'd rather face some steroid users because they know how to hit the ball at least. There's still some competitiveness there. But so yeah, Bonds and A-Rod, and even though A-Rod's not really on this list, but still a guy who used steroids, and Sosa and McGuire, those guys benefited in their power numbers by using steroids. So yeah, I think Roger Maris Jr., I don't think it's a hot take for him to say it. I mean, of course he's going to say it. I think it's just the right thing to say. It's the respectful thing to say. But, because he is a Yankee, Aaron Judge is a Yankee, and his dad was a Yankee great and number 9 retired. But no, I don't think it was a hot take, and I don't think it's wrong for him to say that. And I actually agree because I think there is, like you said, I think there's an importance of being heralded as the one player to pass Roger Maris clean, right? Like without using steroids. And I think it's something that he should be respected for and heralded and for. And so yeah, I agree. I think Aaron Judge, if he gets this one home run and maybe more, should be considered the major league all-time leader, or you know what I mean.
Yeah, for the season.
Yeah.
You guys hit the nail on the head, as most people would say, saying Judge deserved it, and what Roger Maris Jr. said. I completely agree with you guys. Like, with imagining the steroid users, like Barry Bonds was incredible. You see all the stuff that these guys did over the years, but you never really saw a season like this with someone without using steroids before, as you guys mentioned. Like, you mentioned it last week that we have to embrace and appreciate what Aaron Judge has done. And you're exactly right. Like, not being a Yankees fan, I'm the only Mets fan out of the three of us. And watching it from another perspective, it's incredible. Like, I do wish he's going to play for the Mets, but I feel like now that he's broken the record, there's absolutely no way that he doesn't play for the Yankees next year, most likely, if they can afford him. So I think the major thing here is that Roger Maris was absolutely correct. So, I mean, I want to ask you guys this now that Yankees second seed in the American League, it's guaranteed now the second seed in the American League. Is there any true team, if you consider the Astros in this, that can really challenge the Yankees in the postseason this year? I mean, Colin, you can start us off.
Well, I think it's fair to say, I mean, I really think that if you're a Yankee fan, you shouldn't be expecting to roll over a lot of these teams by any stretch of the imagination, because the truth of the matter really, frankly, is the Yankees have not been dominant in the playoffs in this kind of Aaron Judge era. I mean, sure, you had 2017 and 2019 where you go to the ALCS, but you also have those years where you say you lose to Tampa Bay in the divisional series, you lose to Boston in the wild card game. So I think the main important thing is that if you're a Yankee fan, you really cannot get too ahead of yourself going into this postseason. I mean, sure, it's a great team, of course. A team that was actually going at a historic pace to start off the year. But, looking at the teams that are in this division, or teams that are in the picture in general, I should say, you're taking a look at all the teams that could possibly play. The Cleveland Guardians, not exactly a team who many think are going to be a World Series team, but definitely a team who has flown under the radar and has been an underdog this season. You're looking at the Seattle Mariners, a team that has been starving for the success for about 20 years now. And I can assure you that once they get into that postseason, they're going to be hungry and ready to go. And you're also looking at two division rivals, the Toronto Blue Jays and the Tampa Bay Rays. And just as I just said, in 2020, the Yankees had absolute fits over the Tampa Bay Rays. They lost in 5 games in the ALDS, and the Rays went on to go to the World Series that year. And Toronto's a team too, which look, the Yankees have beat Toronto in this series. They've done pretty good against Toronto this year, but it's just always an extra element whenever you're playing a division rival. We saw it with Boston. We saw it with Tampa Bay. I think that those are tough matchups. And, Houston, like you said, Houston's also going to be tough for sure. I mean, we know the Yankees have really not been able to get over Houston. I mean, you would hope as a Yankees fan, you'd assume that you'd get past the ALDS and then play Houston in the ALCS and see what happens there. But I just think that it's very important that you can't get too ahead of yourself. The Yankees should, in theory, be the second best team in the American League. Hopefully they can get that upset over the Astros, finally overcome that obstacle. But yeah, that's really what I'd say at the moment. I think that there's a lot of good teams in the American League. All the teams that are going to be there deserve to be there. And just as long as you play like how you should be, you should go to that ALCS and maybe have a chance against Houston. But I just think you have to be cautious in terms of going into this postseason if you're a Yankee fan.
It's crazy, right? We've forgotten that the Yankees clinched the division because all we're talking about is Aaron Judge. And Aaron Judge has really taken over the talk of baseball. The Toronto Blue Jays actually just clinched the playoff spot a few minutes before we started this podcast. Who cares? They lost 2 of 3 to the Yankees. But what I will say, and Robbie, your question was who do we see beating the Yankees? I could see any team beating the Yankees, right? Honestly, I think this team is good enough to go all the way and win it. But I don't know. I think I could easily see Toronto Blue Jays beating this team. I mean, I could see them having more momentum after the series where. Sure, it's a weird situation that I feel like has happened past couple years with the Yankees, where they kind of start a beef will kind of get started against them with a certain team. We saw with the Tampa Bay Rays a few years ago with the whole throwing at Yankee hitters and the whole Chapman throwing at Brosseau and then Brosseau hitting the home run. And all
Can I also just say that Brosseau home run, that was one of the most predictable things I've ever seen in baseball. I just remember watching that game. I remember Brosseau came up to the plate against Aroldis Chapman. You just knew that ball was going to leave, and sure enough, it did. So very heartbreaking loss for the Yankees.
It fits the story, and it's something you can only see in sports, really. But yeah, and what I'm trying to get at is the whole thing with the Blue Jays where got walked off on it. We're talking about a random game in September. The Yankees are a game away from clinching the division, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has the audacity after walking it off, a little base hit against Clark Schmidt. You're not facing Mariano Rivera. You're not facing Aroldis Chapman even. You're facing Clark Schmidt, a guy who's supposed to be a starter out of the bullpen, a young 25-year-old. And you had the audacity to say, "This is my house. Oh, get out of my house." And the Yankees respond by beating them the next day, destroying them. And then the third game, you have Judge breaking a record. You have Anthony Rizzo as the guest manager. Nestor Cortez is the guest pitching coach. Gleyber Torres is the guest bench coach.
I also want to say, I'm not sure how big of a deal it was, but I remember the cameras were actually showing, because we were talking about Guerrero there, that when Aaron Judge actually hit that 61st home run, Guerrero turned his back to Aaron Judge. So, you can clearly see that those two teams don't like each other. So, if they see each other in the ALDS, it's going to be an intense series for sure.
And then you have the whole Cole and Manoah thing where Manoah threw up an in a Judge. Manoah and Judge kind of made up, but Cole started yelling, and then there's the whole.
It's Garrett Cole. What do you expect?
Yeah, no, Cole.
It's the type of character that he is.
Cole's a different person. Like he's not. Yeah, I don't know him. He's not a. There aren't many people like Garrett Cole where he's got a weird personality about him. And then the post game press conferences where he seems half annoyed, but he seems like he's enjoying his time here. And then he wants to get angry, but he also likes to enjoy. I don't know what's up with him. He's kind of a little wacky, but no. But I really could see there being this whole narrative of the Blue Jays being underdogs, or they're trying to create that narrative, and they could easily come into Yankee Stadium, win 2 games, then win at home and sweep the Yankees. The Rays have played very well against the Yankees, even though the Yankees have the season series against them. They've walked into Yankee Stadium and won a couple games against the Yankees, and they beat the Yankees in the past. The Guardians, and let me talk about the Guardians because winning
the Guardians.
Yeah, because let me tell you,
I think that's the only team that if you're the Yankees, you can confidently beat with so much ease.
I get what you're saying, and that's the exact.
They have Emmanuel Clase, and that's about it.
That's the exact reason why I think they can beat the Yankees because they're so underrated. They won the division. They were the third team
Look
in baseball
who's there, though.
To win the division. Yes, I get that. And I understand they're not winning games, but still, we're talking about a division with the White Sox who are supposed to run away with it. The Twins. You cannot blame the Guardians. They may not win a playoff series. The Yankees can easily sweep them. In fact, I would give the Yankees a 70-80% chance of winning that series easily, sweeping the Guardians. but I'd still be careful of them and be cautious because they have the potential to be that one random team like we saw with the Nationals a few years back, the Cardinals back in like 2011, where they were a wild card team, the Royals in 2014 and 15 even. Right, they have the potential to be this team that relies on average and solid pitching. You'd mentioned how they only have Class A. If you look deeper in that bullpen, they're putting it together with these names that I can't even like. You can't even make this.
They remind
up.
you a lot of the. They remind you a lot of the Mariners from last year if they made the playoffs.
Kind of like you're talking about. I don't even remember their names. Like I think one guy's name like Sam Hentges or
from
something, like a lefty. Cleveland, yeah.
I mean, they have Karinchak.
He's one. He's actually one of the
I
ones
love Karinchak. I think he's super underrated.
Like, sidearmer. I forget his name. It's like Nick Sandlin.
That's Nick Sandlin. I remember
random pitchers that they have.
Yeah,
and they have one of the better bullpens in baseball,
which is miraculous. That's a phenomenal point.
Their offense, it's like Steven Kwan, Jose Ramirez, Ahmed Rosario,
Andres Jimenez.
Two
Mets players. Players that we traded for Lindor.
Actually, completely unironically, it looks like a win for both sides now, that Lindor trade, because Cleveland have their middle infield for the future stacked up.
Sort of.
I mean,
with Rosario eventually,
he'll be a free agent.
It's an interesting thing, but I want to mention a team that I quickly mentioned. What about Seattle?
And I think getting to Seattle
as the last team in the, I believe they're the last wild card team. You saw what they did against the Yankees. They were they the team that threw the no hitter? Who threw the no hitter?
It was the Astros.
It was the Astros.
But the Yankees did get dominated twice by Luis Castillo.
Now that's exactly what I want to mention. I think Luis Castillo, phenomenal ad, possibly overpaid with the new contract. It's a long-term thing.
What were the details?
I think it was like 5 years, $100+ million. It was under 110.
You need to do that.
It was needed, but I love Logan Gilbert. George Kirby's been solid. Marco Gonzalez has revived himself. I believe he's an ERA under 3.5 for the first time in like 5 years. He's been solid. The bullpen's been miraculous, led by I don't even know.
I mean, I don't know what happened the other day against Kansas
true.
City.
That is true. That is pretty embarrassing. Diego Castillo. I mean, I still don't know how, but I feel like imagine if Kendall Graveman was still there instead of Diego Castillo.
We don't like Kendall Graveman.
Well,
we don't like Kendall Graveman.
Yeah, no, I know. Not many people do.
The whole
yeah, that's fair. But imagine I think if he was still there, I think the Mariners bullpen would be even better than they are with Castillo.
He's kind of struggling in Chicago.
He is, but it's Chicago. I'm going to say this about Tony La Russa, who is not a good manager.
He's going to come back too, which is crazy.
He should get sacked. He deserves to get sacked.
Here's the thing.
Aren't the White Sox winning a lot without him?
Not only should he
Aren't the White Sox winning a lot without him though? No, I think they've won 3 of 4.
What I'll say about La Russa is he not only should be sacked, but the entire front office should be sacked, because we're talking about a poor guy who has. I mean, he's in the hospispital now. Like he can't even manage the team.
That is
he's
true.
In his late 70s, almost 80-year-old. He got arrested for a DUI right when he first got hired to be the manager. This is a guy who is managing a team that hit into an 8-5 triple play. And intentionally walking guys in 1-2 counts.
I was about to mention that.
It's like this is ridiculous. Like I don't want to nothing against the guy personally, but it's like you never would have thought that a baseball like brain could go away. Maybe you thought maybe a player's only their physical talent could go away. No, man. We clearly learned that your brain really deteriorates in terms of what you know about the game after you get a certain age. And La Russa should not have been brought back. I don't know. I don't watch much White Sox baseball. I didn't see the problem with Rick Renteria. I thought he took the team to the playoffs.
The problem with Renteria was his style was boring, and he didn't know how to use a starting pitching rotation well. So and we saw that with I think it was with the emergence of Dylan Cease. Yeah, he is a perfect example of this, because when Renteria had Dylan Cease for the 2 years he had him, Dylan Cease, I believe, had an ERA over 5 because they used him too long. Now they're letting his velo's gone up. That's a big thing with him. And his breaking ball, have you seen his curveball?
Oh, it's disgusting.
It's absolutely ridiculous. So, but he's gotten that confidence through the coaching staff that they have now, and that he's going. They used to force him to go 7 innings, 8 possibly. Now he has this stuff and he's developed more. Maybe if Renteria was still there, he'd find a way to go 7 innings. But it's not the style that he really is. He's they get 90 pitches a night guy. But my problem with them has been like you mentioned, look at the talent this team has. How the hell are they in 3rd? How? Like
I think it's a combination of a little bit of everything.
I think
it's a terrible coaching staff. I think for the most part, I think they did a good job. They tried to get younger, right? I remember their pitching coach was they had a long time pitching coach, and then they replaced him with a younger guy who improved Dylan Cease. But I mean, you also bring up Lucas Giolito, who's only gotten worse.
That's a phenomenal
I think
example.
Lance Lynn, I don't think he's improved much.
I want to see the emergence of Michael Kopech.
Yeah, he's another one. He's another one who's kind of struggled, not for nothing.
I mean, I think he's
like,
in the area of
had
4.
his bright spots, and then I mean, this is a guy who has disgusting stuff, and he's really not improved. Dylan Cease has improved. I remember he was like more of a contact pitcher and pitching out of the bullpen at times. Now he's one of the best dominant stars. He's gonna get Cy Young votes, but he might. I mean, He might win the Cy Young award.
So here's a better question. Who would you guys vote for Cy Young? I'll go first. I'm picking Dylan Cease for the American League. It's a fun pick. I bet people are gonna pick Ohtani. I bet people are gonna pick. I don't even know Verlander. I guess I'm gonna go with the dude who stayed healthy all year. I'm going Dylan Cease. What about you guys?
I mean, I don't know what happened to Verlander. I don't know if he's like declined as the year went on. I remember he was off to a historic start, but so I honestly have not looked at the stats. Honestly, that's just my bad. But I know I don't think he's fallen off that much. I think he got hurt. If I could be wrong, did Verlander? Yeah, Verlander got hurt. So yeah, that's why I said. Yeah, I forgot that you said that you're going with the guy who stayed healthy the whole year. Otani's been unreal, man, and I think that would be fair almost.
How?
I would still give it to Dylan Cease, but I think because the way that these people vote, these writers, I think they're gonna vote Ohtani because they're gonna view it as fair.
That's a good point that you brought up the writers for this. Because I'm like, why? If there was a fan vote, would they still vote Ohtani?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
I was gonna mention that, but and I'm also gonna mention my National League pick. I don't. It's annoying. I'm going with Alcantara. He deserves it. He plays for the Marlins, an organization that is not phenomenal. He has literally carried that rotation on his back all year long. Yeah. Sandy Alcantara totally deserves it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it has to be him. I think the only comparable name is Spencer Strider, but he's kind of had some starts that are, falling off and not.
Hold on, hasn't he only pitched half the year?
That's what I'm getting to as well. I think him also being a called up rookie in the middle of the year who's kind of viewed as a swingman, and now being an ace of that rotation pretty much, and now he's hurt again.
Yeah, that's the thing that hurt. But
he was a stretch. He was dominant, unreal.
Oh my god! But if as a Mets fan, I never wanted to face this man.
Yeah,
I remember when Kyle Wright in April was absolutely disgusting, and then he got hurt, and then he started getting lit up by everyone. I think it's gonna feel like the same thing here with Strider. Even though the difference between Wright and Strider is less pitches but more break. So when you see like his slider, it moves like a miraculous amount. It kind of looks like Dylan Cease's curveball in a way.
They also look alike.
They do look alike actually, but I feel like people are gonna figure out Spencer Strider one way or another. No one figured him out because no one knew who the heck he was. Yeah. Like he's
pretty nasty though.
He's disgusting. Please, I'm praying that the Mets don't have to deal with him in the playoffs. I feel like he's that he's gonna. I feel like you can compare him to Ian Anderson in a way because Ian Anderson has been decent in the playoffs, but he's been so good he used to be so good in the regular season. He started to fall off a little bit, but I feel like he's a very comparable to a little bit better version of Ian Anderson.
Yeah, I think Wright has made himself more like a pitch to contact guy. I could be wrong about that. I think that's from what I've seen, but no, yeah, Spencer Strider's a pretty disgusting arm. There's always a guy who comes out of nowhere. He'll definitely, I think, win Rookie of the Year in the National League, for that stretch that he went on. But in terms of National League Cy Young, I think it has to be Alcantara.
I mean, I'm taking a look at the stats here. I mean, I have not been following both of these races that much, but seeing Justin Verlander started 27 games over the year and had a 1.80 ERA. Now, this is 7 less games than Dylan Cease, but I'm not sure if they're going to give it to Verlander again because Dylan Cease would be a first-time winner. Obviously, Verlander has won Cy Youngs in his past. You guys ran up Alcantara too. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, well, actually, that's not true because the MLB does not usually give these awards to, or doesn't discriminate against teams that have bad records like the Marlins. So I think for sure that Alcantara, considering the work that he's done, should definitely be considered for the Cy Young. It just really depends on, how much they really put into a factor. The fact that Justin Verlander has pitched 7 less games than Dylan Cease, because just going based off that, I think that Verlander should get it possibly because, I think that he's overall been the best pitcher throughout the whole year, but probably the voters are going to go with Dylan Cease on that one, I can imagine.
Yeah, and his Alcantara has just been insane. I mean, pitching complete game after complete game. It's unheard of, and I think that's something that definitely needs to be appreciated. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's anything else.
I mean, I want to bring this up as well. We brought up teams that the Yankees could consider that to be deadly in the playoffs. How about the National League? If you look at the Mets, is there a team in the National League that, like, well, of course you have the Dodgers. They're absolutely outrageous every year, and I feel like them and the Braves are very similar. Here's the reason why. Both teams find ways to call up prospects no one knows who the heck they are, and they become absolutely ridiculous. Michael Harris is a perfect example of this. And I feel like he should not have signed that contract because I feel like he's better than $9 million a year. But besides the fact, I feel like the Braves, I do not want to face them in a playoff series. Like, especially if you're the Mets, who have been notoriously known for being bad against division teams in the playoffs over the years. Like, you saw, like, I can compare this to, like, I remember when we beat the Cubs and we swept the Cubs. The reason we swept the Cubs because our offense was good. Our offense has scored under 5 runs, I believe, for a while now, like for the last couple of weeks.
But that was also a problem with the 2015 Mets too.
That is a very I remember we had, like, what was it? Our rotation. Matt Harvey was in it, I believe. Syndergaard,
Jonathan Neese.
John Neese.
I know, was he in the postseason?
Pittsburgh Fire. Yes,
young Steven Matz.
Young Steven Matz. We actually didn't pitch Steven Matz in a playoff as a starter. He pitched out of the bullpen.
It was against the Cubs.
No, he came out of the bullpen against the Cubs because Syndergaard didn't go along.
I thought it was like Game 4 against the Cubs.
Syndergaard didn't start game. It might have been. No, you're right. Because the game I'm thinking of is when they faced what's their name? Dodgers. When Syndergaard got ejected instantly.
Oh, that was the year after.
Yeah, that's because that's when Steven Matz came in as a reliever.
And then Matz pitched on Halloween.
Yep, that's correct. And then
I remember that.
Yeah, that's fun. But I feel like a low key contender that can really scare a lot of people. Why is no one talking about the Cardinals? I feel like the Cardinals, they're a very interesting team. Adam Wainwright is old. Yadier Molina is just ridiculous. I wish he can still hit nukes, but we really haven't seen that. But them as a combo, being able to push, like, they've never really been able to see Jack Flaherty all year. Understand that. They're that good of a team without Jack Flaherty. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, that division is a dumpster fire other than Milwaukee, but people can't stop sleeping on the Cardinals. They're going to be the 3 seed in the playoffs.
The Cardinals, Colin and I did that podcast in high school in senior year.
Yeah,
Cardinals were my prediction to win it all before the year.
Oh my god!
And what's funny is, and I had a, obviously you have, if the Cardinals are going to win the World Series, they have to have Goldschmidt as an MVP type player.
Absolutely.
Arenado, and which they have obviously, and Wainwright and Yachty and
the addition of Jordan Montgomery.
That is, I obviously didn't see that coming, but something like that, yeah, like the rotation, Miles Mikolas. But what's funny is I actually predicted Flaherty to win the Cy Young before the year, not knowing that he was hurt at that time. And when I found out he was hurt, I was thinking, he'll come back in a month, and he hasn't come back. I mean, or he came back, got hurt. I think he came back again.
He came back again,
and then got hurt again,
and then he had another arm issue.
Okay, so he's gonna be out for the year, you think?
I believe he is. That'll be interesting for the Cardinals. Because, like, what do you got in the rotation? You got Michaelis,
Wainwright, Jose Quintana. Who's actually been.
That's actually a phenomenal point. Jose Quintana, I feel like, is actually one of the best gotten pieces that the Cardinals have. He has postseason experience on multiple teams. Mm-hmm. He is going. Why? This is what I never understood about what the Cardinals traded for him. Why are they going after all old players? I feel like that's like the wrong way to go.
I guess they don't believe in like a young guy coming in like the Braves do. The Braves are all for that.
Oh no, like the Rays. I feel like the Rays are the same way.
Because like the Cardinals did that again last year. They got John Lester and Jay Happ at the deadline.
I remember that.
When they could have been using that.
Steven Matz, of course.
His name Matt Liberatore. Oh yeah, Steven Matz. I forgot he was on the Cardinals.
I don't know. I think a lot of people did. I think a lot of people did.
Is he hurt or something?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
That's a phenomenal question. But I think we're going to change our ways or switch it around. Let's go to football a little bit. I'll start us off with the New York Jets. I'm in the pullover, and that you usually think that means we won. That's not true. The New York Jets basically got humiliated by Joe Burrow, who finally looked like himself, even though the Jets defense was horrendous. Joe Burrow threw for over 275 yards. And Joe Flacco, I believe, though the Jets defense did hold him to under 100 passing yards in the second half, Joe Flacco found a way to almost throw 300 yards again. But the issue with Joe Flacco, and by the way, this is the actual reason why I'm wearing this. Zach Wilson comes back this week. I want to get your guys' thoughts on this in a second. That Zach Wilson, I am scared as a Jets fan for Zach Wilson coming back for one reason. The offensive line has gotten so much worse since the beginning of the year due to injury. Like Dwayne Brown, who the Jets signed on, I believe, a 2-year deal from Seattle. He's very good. He's 37. That's, I think, why we signed him. And he has been on the IR since week 1. He has not played a game for the team yet. The Jets just lost George Fant, Mekhi Becton. We all know that saga continues. So I feel like with a third-string left tackle, I feel like this feels rushed. As another, I think, Colin, you can say on this a little bit as well before we go into the Giants. The Jets playing Pittsburgh, interesting team without TJ Watt. As an outsider, do you think this is a little bit rushed and like a problem for Zach Wilson to be coming back this early?
Well, I'm not a doctor myself, so I'm not sure exactly what the state of Zach Wilson's injury is. But I mean, if TJ Watt was playing this game, you definitely would be much more concerned. But Pittsburgh still has a good pass rush. In general, with Zach Wilson, I feel that he has to come back eventually. One thing I will say, though, is I remember seeing the stat, Joe Flacco is 5th in the NFL in passing yards. So how about that, So Joe Flacco somewhat held down the fort for the Jets here at 1-2. At least they're not 0-3. Going into that game against Pittsburgh, I think that the Jets, they have a shot for sure. I don't think Pittsburgh's a phenomenal team. I mean, we saw them once again, lose last week to Cleveland. I think that if Zach Wilson can have a good game, hopefully have that, sort of a leap year that which many Jets fans are hoping for, I think that the Jets could win this game for sure. We also have another guy you've been talking about a lot, Garrett Wilson, the young wide receiver. You're going to get to see that connection for the first time. So I think that, it's always tough. Regardless, when you're coming back into the NFL off an injury, you're always going to play a pretty good team. It's just generally how it is. You're going to usually play a good pass rush. So, for Wilson, as long as he's good to go, I think it's fine. I don't know the extent of the injury, but if you're rushing him back, then for sure you should never rush a player back, especially when that guy is, the guy you're kind of putting the weight of your franchise on it in the case of the Jets. But, I'm sure for Jets fans, that'll be exciting to see him back.
And especially, as you mentioned, the offensive line is not doing too well and is kind of getting injured a little bit. And we saw with the Giants, you can actually connect this to the Giants game, and it's just a natural football thing. Offensive line is crucial. And when you don't have that, your quarterback, especially when you have a guy like Zach Wilson, who is going to, be your future quarterback, Zach Wilson, who's coming back from injury, you don't want to rush him back and push him into a game where, regardless of the opponent, he's gonna probably get pressured.
I feel like it's a New York thing that every year that the offensive line just has to be bad or banged up. Because you saw Zach Wilson last year; he was good behind that offensive line. They upgraded the line by signing Laken Tomlinson, who's been absolutely ridiculous. He's been phenomenal. They really solidified the middle of that offensive line, something they really needed to do. They're using their I believe it's their both third-string tackles, including a rookie, Max Mitchell, who, by the way, has been actually very solid. I had a feeling that one of their 4th-round picks had to be good. But at the end of the day, it's very concerning. But enough about the Jets since we lost. How about we go to another team that lost, Colin, the New York Giants?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the terrors that Daniel Jones had to go through on Monday Night Football. So the Giants, had that 2-0 start. Many fans are very optimistic. Actually, one of the most energized crowds I've seen in MetLife Stadium really in a while. They had a whiteout. All the fans are there in white Giants gear going to play the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. The Cowboys are also without Dak Prescott starting Cooper Rush. You think as a Giants fan, maybe just maybe you can see 3-0 for the first time since 2009. Well, it didn't happen. And here's the reason why it didn't happen. The offensive line does not really look like it's improved that much, and that's very concerning for me. Now, you can't be too hard on Evan Neal because he is just a rookie, and that was only his 3rd NFL game and his first ever time playing in primetime, especially in that big of a rivalry such as Giants-Cowboys. I do also want to remind everyone that just 2 years ago, we were having this exact same discussion about Andrew Thomas, who is now undoubtedly the best player on our line. He was struggling a lot. Evan Neal's doing the same, but still, DeMarcus Lawrence had 3 sacks, and Daniel Jones was pressured on 24 of his 30 dropbacks. Now think about that for a second. 24 of 30. I don't care what quarterback you are. You're not really going to succeed in that circumstances. Now, I'm not a Daniel Jones apologist. I've been critical on the guy in the past, but you really can't blame that loss on him. I mean, the Daniel Jones of the past would usually, as he was getting pressured, would make stupid throws. I mean, granted, he had that pick at the end of the game to Trayvon Diggs, but not the most impressive stat line for him. He went 20 for 37, 196 passing yards. He had the pick, but also rushing. He rushed for 79 yards, really making plays happen there. So it's really not going to show up on the stat sheet, but I do think that Daniel Jones played an okay game. But still, the problem with this team, they can't score points. He only scored 16 points in that game. Cooper Rush, you got to give him his credit. He did his job. Now he's 3-0 as a starter. Kind of reminded me a little bit of the Taylor Heineke game from a year ago. The Giants don't usually do good against these backup divisional quarterbacks. Doesn't really work out very well. But I mean, as a fan, you knew you were going to lose eventually. There's no way with this new regime, especially considering how bad the Giants have been in recent years. You didn't think you were going to, obviously run away with the division or really compete with the Philadelphia Eagles, who's another team we have to talk about because of how well they've been doing. But, Brian Dable, the first loss for him as a head coach, you get a bounce back on Sunday against the Chicago Bears, a game which I feel that if you really do want to somewhat be competitive this year, I think that's a game you have to win because although the Bears are 2-0, I do want to add that I actually saw a stat that Justin Fields has the least amount of passing yards for the first 3 games for a quarterback since I believe like the 1970s. It's been pretty rough for him. So the Giants have to win that game. The offensive line still concerns me, but I mean, granted, it always has been the case. Even bad teams in the past, because, the Jets have been bad over the past decade. The Browns have been bad over the past decade, but at least you guys have still had good old linemen. I mean, the Jets had Nick Mangold. The Browns had Joe Thomas, all those guys, the Giants really have had no one. And I'm being fully serious when I say this. In the past decade, really, I think Andrew Thomas is probably maybe the best offensive lineman we've had. And I know that's crazy to say because the guy's only had, one great year, but that's really just how rough it's been for this team for so long getting that O-line. And I actually saw, points getting made towards this, for at least for that game, is that you can still kind of see just the effects that the Dave Gettleman era really had on this team. Kenny Golladay, he says that he wants to play. Well, he got to play on Monday night, and guess what? The one time he gets thrown the ball in the fourth quarter, you need to catch the ball, he drops it. And, the offensive line, something that Dave Gettleman invested a lot of draft picks and has not worked out. So it's the first year of a rebuild because the Giants really reset this year. So just hopefully we see something better going forward. I mean, Chris, I want to get your takeaways also as a Giants fan from what you watched on Monday night.
I don't really have much else to add, honestly. I watched that game. It was, close game, really. What you would consider an average Giants first half. It was, what was the score after the first half? It was like 6-6, right?
6-3.
And then it became 6-6. And then, the Cowboys scored that touchdown. I was thinking the Giants are going to come back. But, of course, as you mentioned, when you're pressured 24, like 36 times, like you're not going to succeed a lot. You need that offensive line to back you up. It really wasn't Jones' fault. But, of course, as with every Daniel Jones game, he's going to give up a pick, which he did at the end there. It really just awful game. Kayvon Thibodeau's debut was supposed to be a great event, and it wasn't that. Yeah. So yeah, just very bleak. But I mean, can
Still
you?
2-1.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't be that, man. I mean,
You got to mention though.
Yeah.
Why aren't we really talking about Cooper Rush and the game he had? Cooper Rush's game. Now, Cooper Rush.
Point in talking about
Cooper Rush. Let me pull this up. Cooper Rush, I feel like I remember earlier in the week when they were mentioning before the game about a possible QB controversy, which I believe is absolutely ridiculous because why the heck did you pay Dak Prescott that money? But to be honest, I think the big problem with the Giants was their run defense. Like I believe they had 177 rushing yards against the Giants, so they had almost 400 yards of total offense, which granted the Jets didn't look that bad, but Cooper Rush had won 21 of 31 for 215 and a touchdown. Now that does not look as crazy as you think it may be. It's a backup quarterback playing against a decent defense, a team with the Giants that they have the momentum. They think they can win these games. And Cooper Rush just says, there's no pressure on me. I'm just playing until Dak comes back. And he comes in and plays another decent game. CeeDee Lamb, who dropped the most wide open pass I've ever seen since DeAndre Swift's incident in Chicago a couple years ago. And Evan Ingram as well. That's another good reference. He went 8 for 87. Now, you may not think that's crazy, But CeeDee Lamb, I think, has been probably one of the best players on this team all year for Dallas. But besides that, I think the Giants, this is a game that you guys mentioned you're expecting, but I feel like you left a lot on the table. But let's go to another game that caught a lot of people's attention. Philadelphia is 3-0. As a rival team, how good do you guys think Philadelphia really is?
Well, there's one consistent thing about Philadelphia, at least over the past decade, is that they're never truly bad for a couple of years. You saw the Giants have had their down years. Washington's had their fair share of down years. But for the Eagles, they're always consistently at least a solid football team. In 2020, they had a bad year. They only won 4 games. They made that big switch to Jalen Hurts. Many thought that, Carson Wentz was debatably, at least at that time, playing like maybe the best quarterback Philadelphia has ever had. He's playing at an MVP level. But Jalen Hurts comes in and, he's basically proved them right in every single aspect. A lot of concerns with him throwing the ball last year. People were wondering, is his skill set mostly just based off his running, or can he be that passer who needs to make those big throws? I've watched what he's been doing so far this season. Even that connection back on Sunday with Devontae Smith, who had 150 yards in the first half. Really unbelievable. And, the Eagles are always going to be a team we're going to have to look out for, because I've seen them firsthand many times. I think this Eagles team is a good football team. I actually was talking about them last week. I'm looking at their schedule. I think it's not entirely out of the question that the Eagles could be the top seed in the NFC this year, because I need to pull it up right here. But, you play the Jacksonville this week. Jacksonville looks more improved. But, coming up, you got Jacksonville. You have Arizona, who's been struggling. You got Dallas. You don't know the situation, what it's going to be looking like then. You have Pittsburgh. You have the Texans, Commanders again, the Colts, until finally you get the Green Bay Packers. So if they won all those games, you're looking at a 10-0 football team. Obviously, I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't think it's very out of the realm of possibility to say they'll win 7 or 8 of those games.
And honestly, I think you look at after the Packers game, it doesn't get much harder after that. I mean, I don't know what would change that. I mean, unless the Giants want to be incredible, and then we'll take 2 from the Eagles. But
I mean, yeah, I really do think that Philadelphia is going to be a very good team this year. I mean, as a Giants fan, I hate to see it. It seems like they're always, back in terms of that division. It seems like every single year, it's either Dallas is having a great year or Philadelphia is having a great year. But, it's just the way it goes. I think that Jalen Hurts is possibly, people are even talking about him possibly being in the MVP discussion at this point. People are talking about how well he's been playing. Obviously in the AFC, you're looking at Lamar Jackson. He's been playing phenomenal in that contract year. Joe Flacco, of course, you got to throw out the name. Young Kane. But yeah, Philadelphia, I really do think that they're going to be a team to beat this year, possibly in that NFC, which I think is wide open.
It's crazy.
Another team I want to bring up real quick. There's one other 3-0 team. I don't like saying that they're 3-0 because they're a very interesting team. That team is the Miami Dolphins. Another, of course, it had to be an AFC East team, keeping the stale narrative over the past 10 years or so with New England and then Buffalo, and then somehow the Dolphins, who have, I want to mention this now, the Eagles and the Dolphins are 3-0, and they've had the best draft day trades, trading and getting all those picks. I believe the Eagles are one, or the Dolphins are one of the two. He's 3-0, and they have and one of their picks is the 5th pick or something. The Eagles having the Saints pick. Thank you for mentioning that. But Tua Tagovailoa, a very interesting quarterback. I got to see a lot at Alabama. I remember they're both Alabama quarterbacks, and one got moved for the other. Because Jalen got benched for Tua. But the thing I'm interested to see is now, the Buffalo offensive coordinator, after failing to spike the ball, said it all, that game was very frustrating for everybody. Because I feel like both teams left too many points on the table. And I feel like Buffalo with Josh Allen, I feel like it's that one game in the year, I feel like, where Buffalo beat themselves. We saw it last year with Jacksonville, when I believe it was 9-6 Buffalo had lost. I believe it was something along those lines. But Tua, he looks like an MVP candidate. It's scary to say. He's great. He had the 6 touchdowns against Baltimore. He had a solid game, a decent game against Buffalo. And in 2 weeks, he gets to go and play the Jets, who I just feel like he's going to bombard the Jets because he's Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who I feel like are both very similar to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in their talent. Not talent level, but just how good they can be. So, it's a very interesting situation in Miami. I feel like I feel like that's the division where 3 teams can come out of. I originally was thinking it'd be the AFC West, But 2 or 3 teams can maybe come out of the East if New England figures it out, which
But now that
Mac Jones injury, that's a phenomenal point. With the Bills and the Dolphins, I feel like are true early season playoff locks if everything goes their way. And Tua, I don't like thinking that Tua is absolutely insane. He looks like he finally is going to be that world beater that proves everyone wrong. That one QB that proves everyone wrong. Because I remember everyone talking about his arm strength, which granted is still not as crazy as you think it could be for a guy of his level. But he's starting to lead people with the pass more. That's been an issue with a lot of NFL quarterbacks this year. And a name I'm going to point out is Joe Flacco. Because watching the first 3 games with Joe Flacco, I cannot tell you. I think I can count it more times than at least 2 sets of hands where he did not lead a receiver with a pass. What was the 2 times he led a receiver with the pass, like on a regular pass over the middle? It was Garrett Wilson twice. And I believe one of them was the game-winning touchdown with Cleveland, and the other one was basically the equivalent of a hospital pass where he almost got absolutely leveled by Von Bell last week. So I feel like if Tua keeps playing on the way with the way people think he can play, I feel like he's that candidate all year long. Colin, you can get your bit of this as well.
Well, I'll touch on Miami, but I also want to talk specifically about Buffalo. But, in general, that was a really weird game, though. You're looking at the butt punt. That was that. I mean, that I've never seen that before. I don't think I'll ever see that. I don't think I'll ever see that again. But, Buffalo had a chance to win that game. They had a chance to kick the game-winning field goal, but time ran out on them. And really, just this Miami team, I think they're a good team, but I don't think that, they've won in some weird ways. That you're looking at the stat line for Buffalo. Josh Allen threw for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns, and they still lose the football game. They may be asking yourself, why did they lose the football game? Because for all these years, Buffalo has not been able to get the run game going. Zach Moss had 4 carries for 46 yards. Singletary, supposed to be their lead running back, had 9 carries for 13 yards. And Josh Allen led the team in rushing once again. And, for Josh Allen, if you're throwing the ball 60 times, he actually threw it 63 times in that Miami game, you can't be rushing it that much because, in general, it's just not going to lead to a very long shelf life for you. So I actually saw this trade proposal get thrown out here, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on it because I think it could be possible. Now, if the New York Giants continue to go on their way, going for the rebuild in the year if it doesn't go out very well, I saw the possibility get floated out there. Would the Giants trade Saquon Barkley to the Buffalo Bills? Now, listen, I do think that if you're a Giants fan, you do not want to see it happen. I don't want to see it happen. Saquon Barkley is my favorite player. But think about a guy like that for Buffalo because Sean McDermott's, he's a defensive head coach. They have not been able to scheme, a good running game for so long. I think that if you're Buffalo, you really do kind of need that superstar running back who can just make plays happen in order to take that kind of off Josh Allen's shoulders. Because as you get deep into the postseason, you can't keep on relying on that running game. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be Saquon Barkley, but I do think that, at least from what I'm seeing, I think that Buffalo should really look into maybe getting the star running back. I think that you're a team that's looking to win the Super Bowl right now. I think that those draft picks are not going to be super valuable to you at the moment. If I'm Buffalo, I think I'm looking at that. I mean, what do you guys think?
I would like to touch on this first. I feel like it's a stereotype that no matter what the Bills do to fix their running game, it's not going to work. Because I feel like what Buffalo has tried to do, and I respect Buffalo for this, is go out, trade for pieces. Now, you've seen them trade for, here's a good example, Stephon Diggs. Great trade. They traded a first-round pick. Both sides won the deal because the Vikings drafted a guy by the name of Justin Jefferson, who he had one good week this year. I'll address him possibly in a second. But you look at it's a win-win deal. But Buffalo, I don't know. I don't feel like they're a team that can really establish the run, like with the scheming they have. It's a very weird thing to talk about because Buffalo is, even through years past, Buffalo has been that stereotypical team to throw it like more than everyone else. And being a fan of the Jets and watching the Bills for the last, I think, 11 years now, it's been a stereotype for all 11 years. Like when the Jets had the chance to make the playoffs, we played Buffalo in the snow in Buffalo, and they had over 200 rushing yards in the first 3 quarters of that game. It's a stereotype for the Bills. And I feel like especially having a mobile quarterback there as well, I feel like that's a perfect fit for them. Because if you can't establish the ground game with your running backs, do it with the guy who can actually move in the pocket with your starting quarterback, who's very mobile, in Josh Allen, who people used to think like, yeah, he, instead of making that regular pass, is just going to step up in the pocket and try to run for like a 1 yard gain. That's not the type of guy he is. He's ginormous. And like he has I remember when people when the Bills drafted him, he got a lot of criticism for having lack of accuracy and wanting to run too much. He has fixed both things. So I feel like going back to the question at hand, no matter what the Bills do, I don't think they're going to get a running game. I don't see the Giants trading him because Saquon Barkley has been great for the start of the season. And unless you can't find a long-term deal with Saquon, I don't see him leaving the Giants at all. I mean, you guys can get a take on this as well.
I think it really just depends on Joe Schoen. I think it just depends on whether he wants to fully just tear down this roster, because not a lot of general managers are going to want to get kind of stuck into that contract pain or running back like maybe 15, 20 million a year for a guy who you did not draft. Obviously if it was Dave Gettleman, I think it's a completely different story. Saquon Barkley is a guy who I do not want to see go. I want to make that very clear. He's my favorite player. But, I think that I just think that the scenario is possible, because, maybe like you said, he's playing very well. Then maybe that increases his trade value. Maybe if Buffalo, is looking desperate for, getting that running game, making that Super Bowl push, it could be possible. Chris.
I mean, like, what's your trade package that you need if you make this trade?
As an outsider and knowing these
drafts,
as a drafting deal, like I love talking about stuff like this. It depends who you trade him to. Like, if you are the Bills, you are giving up multiple first-round picks. You have no choice. I feel like the Giants, if they were to make this trade, and I'll speak about this real quickly because they have all the leverage. That is not something you usually see. I feel like Saquon would be that one guy who says, like, yeah, I want to stay here my entire career. He'd be that one guy who's loyal. So I feel like Saquon should stay, but if I would take at least, I would say a Jamal Adams package. Like of the value Jamal Adams had. I mean, what do you think, Colin?
I mean, it's depending on. I mean, if Saquon keeps it up, you got to be looking at a first round pick at the minimum. You're also those extra picks. You said Jamal Adams. I think that's very possible. But it really just comes down to how Buffalo is. I guarantee you, if Josh Allen has some form of injury where he's running this year, the narrative completely changes. You're going to want to look at that guy because ultimately you want to make sure Josh Allen's as healthy as possible. You want to take as much pressure off him, especially if you're trying to win the Super Bowl. But in terms of trade packages, I think it has to at least be, first, second round pick, extra packages involved. But, it really just depends on Joe Schoen. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I remember I just saw, get floated out there in the media in a story, and I thought that, it was something that I think we should talk about.
Yeah, no, then in that case, it really comes down to what happens, obviously, right? This team, maybe we are looking at a good Giants team that had a bad game. Of course, there are problems, the offensive line, things like that. But obviously, Daniel Jones, what's he going to be? How good is he? Or is he going to be better? So we got to wait and see. But definitely a conversation like we had in a few weeks if this team
absolutely
the past couple weeks.
Absolutely. But I want to take a quick preview into next week. There's a lot of good games, a couple key good games next week. I'll ask you guys in a second what you guys think. My game to watch next week is the team we just mentioned, Buffalo. They are going to Baltimore against Lamar Jackson, who is very, very good, by the way. He's had a phenomenal start to the season, even though he choked against Miami. He has been, I think, an MVP caliber quarterback to start the year. Now, he didn't look great against the Jets passing, but he found a way to use his legs in the second half. And I feel like he's that one guy who can just win by doing anything possible. So I think my pick for that game will be Buffalo going to Baltimore. I think Buffalo has the more better caliber team, even though it's usually a narrative we've seen this year that the better team doesn't always win. But I'm going to go with the opposite. I think the Bills win this game, not convincingly, because I think there's a couple questions with Buffalo's defense, with Micah Hyde being out. I feel like he's a big hole that you can't really replace at the moment. But I'm going to go with Buffalo and Baltimore. Another key game to watch. I think a lot of my friends would like this one: Jacksonville and Philadelphia. A game no one's going to be talking about to start the week. You have Trevor Lawrence and first place Jacksonville. Weird to say. Doug Peterson playing his old team. That's a phenomenal point. Against Jalen Hurts and the 3-0 Eagles. I pick for that game. I can't pick Jacksonville. I am going with Philadelphia, a team that is much on paper much better, and as the season performing, I think they've been much better. Colin, what game do you got this week?
Well, it's not a game that maybe you're going to talk about, but I'm looking at Broncos Raiders because the Raiders had a rough season. They're 0-3, but I don't like what Denver has been doing this season. It's something we didn't really get into. Really weird game on that Sunday night game against the 49ers, but I think that the Raiders win this game. I think the Raiders get their first win of the season. I think that Denver continues to struggle, and we'll see what happens in that regard. Also, Chiefs Buccaneers is a big game. Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes for possibly the last time. Chris, if you have any other game to mention.
Honestly, I like those picks. I really like the pick that you mentioned, Robbie, of Jacksonville versus Eagles. I think obviously the Eagles being undefeated and the Jaguars looking a lot better this season. This could be a game that has major implications on really both divisions. I think. Well, obviously the NFC East and yeah. So I think I think that's a game to watch and. Sorry, there was another game. Oh yeah, tonight's game, Bengals Dolphins. I think that's a game that you even want to talk about, Robbie. It seems like
I have. For those who didn't know, I did pull. I wanted to see what everyone else, you listeners, thought. If we do even have any listeners, that is. I put a poll on my Instagram today. Who does everyone got? This poll has. I don't know what to think. A lot of. I'll send you guys the results. 56% of the people went with the Dolphins, which on other polls I've been seeing today, that's not what we're really seeing. But at the end of the day, we'll hear you guys. Of course, how we end every we've ended the first few shows. We'll do it again. Thursday Night Football. We got the Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa playing against Joe Burrow and the 1-2 Cincinnati Bengals. Who do you guys got tonight?
Give me the Cincinnati Bengals. And the reason why is because I just think that I can't picture the Miami Dolphins going 4-0. I think that they've had a great season so far, but the past two games they played, I feel they really kind of escaped with a win. You're looking at Baltimore as a great comeback, but you're down by 21 points or so in the fourth quarter. You're looking at that Buffalo game, a game where if the Bills just had an extra timeout, maybe you lose it. I think that eventually just catches up to Miami. I think that Joe Burrow, who had actually put together a pretty good game against the Jets last week, I think that he'll continue to, get better as the season goes on. I think that the Bengals offense will start to click. And for that reason, I'm going with the Cincinnati Bengals to win. I think it might be a close game.
I'm going with the Dolphins. I agree with you, Robbie. I know it was your pick. I'm going to say the Dolphins. I just think, Bengals obviously 1-2. They've kind of looked a little underwhelming, obviously. Obviously, we talked about how they improved the offensive line, or they tried to, and it really hasn't worked a whole lot, particularly. Obviously, being 1-2 is underwhelming considering you just came off a Super Bowl run. So I'm gonna go with the Dolphins be 4-0, and I just think they look like the better team.
Yeah, Chris mentioned my pick before I even got to say it live this week.
Yeah.
I did pick the Dolphins. I feel like they have you can say they have all the momentum because they beat a better team. They beat Buffalo, and granted, we saw two incredible memes out of that game. By the way, I'd like with the offensive coordinator throwing breaking the tablet and the butt punt. But I think I think Miami is. I feel like they're the hotter team. I feel like Cincinnati's defense. I feel like there's still a couple question marks in there. Miami's looked like the more complete team. So I'm gonna go with the more complete team in the Dolphins. But you can never count on Joe Burrow. And by the way, the unis they're wearing tonight, the all whites. What do you guys think of that, real quick? I kind of like them. What do you guys think?
It's different, but yeah, I think that typically I might be more of a fan of the classic orange, but I think definitely a cool look. You're starting to see more alternative jerseys and helmets in the NFL, so I think it's something that's gonna make for some interesting uniform matchups going forward.
It's actually one of the first times I'm seeing this jersey. I feel like it's definitely the first time I've seen it. It's pretty cool. I'm a fan of their average black and orange. I just think that's really the Bengal look.
They had to change it up eventually, though.
No, I kind of
got. As an outsider and watching that uni over the years, I like the black and orange, but I feel like a good change of scenery, like a change of color, is phenomenal for a team like them.
Yeah, it's good. But if I'm being honest, it looks like just in what they had, just white.
Yeah, the all whites, like, you guys brought up the Giants all white game earlier. I feel like if they found I feel like the Bengals should try and do something like that with those new all white unis. But I think if there's nothing else for today, I'll wrap up the show for once, change it up a little bit. So for everyone watching live, thank you for tuning in with us this week. For those who are watching us not live, we'll hope to see you guys next week from 5 to 6 every Thursday. And for myself, Colin, and Chris, this has been Into the Stands episode 3. We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.